Hello everyone, this is Sheila Shaffie and welcome back to ProcessArc's channel where we provide you with digestible business insights. It's bloody freezing outside, but I totally refuse to do another video inside. Spring is technically here and we're going to continue with our themes of process mapping. Last week's video was all around how do you get yourself ready for the process mapping exercise by really figuring out the intent of the documentation stage of your project. Today's video is focused on the second item on our checklist, which is figuring out the boundaries for your process mapping. Now, this is incredibly important, again, which is why it's on the checklist, because it's going to help guard you against analysis paralysis, which is really everyone's nightmare when it comes to doing a project, because it means we will never actually bring the project to fruition and it's just never going to feel like we're moving forward with anything. Getting a really good sense for where the process begins and when it ends is incredibly important in helping us make sure that we have everything that is important in how the process performs under consideration and ready for our deeper level analysis, which will be coming up later on in future videos. So think of as process boundaries as like a window to your process. The wider you open up that window, the further out the start and the end point of a process analysis comes in, the more you can observe about the process. But the risk that you run with that is that it will be very difficult to document all of those levels of details, and you may run the risk of getting stuck in a bunny hole and never coming out to see the sunshine again. So the best thing to do, the best way to go about defining the process boundaries is actually by using the expertise of your team members. Get everyone into a room, go back to the problem statement that you have in hand, and discover collectively, get consensus on where you think the ideal stop and end point for your analysis and your documentation is, again, with the main objective of uncovering everything that you think is critical to solving the problem at hand. Now, let me just give you an example of what I'm talking about. Let's say that your project objective is to improve client experience, and the business line that you're in is insurance. And the part of the business you're going to focus on that you think has substantial impact to client experience is onboarding a new customer. Now, let's look at this process map and think about where you think the ideal starting point is. Now, this is not a trick question. You're not going to get graded after this. But again, if you think, hey, I'm trying to improve client experience, should the starting point of your process mapping be from the time that the financial rep collects critical data from the customer, or the time that the customer actually accepts a proposal, or should it be when the application that's been completed and signed by the customer gets submitted to the operations team? Now, look at how many potential options you have for starting your analysis, and all of that is important to consider because, again, depending on where you start, you get a different sense for how the process is operating. Now, if it was up to me, the place that I would start the analysis, again, if I think about my main objective being to improve client experience, I would certainly start the process mapping exercise from the minute that the customer has an opportunity to collect critical information from the customer in order to generate a proposal. Because every interaction obviously is important from a client experience perspective. Not all touch points are created equal, but I would venture to guess that that initial point of interface is pretty gosh darn important in how the rest of the process is going to flow. The same conversation comes to the ending point. So if we take a look at this process map again, where do you think we should stop the process mapping exercise? From at the moment that a welcome kit is generated and sent to the customer, or should we stop the analysis at the point that the customer receives their welcome kit and emails us back a notification letter saying that they accepted the policy? Again, if it was up to me, I would do my documentation and understanding the client experience right to the end of that process, which is when they actually receive their packet, they are happy with what they have received, and they are sending us back an acknowledgement saying that they have accepted the policy. So defining the boundaries for your process mapping exercise in the larger scheme of your project is important and can really be done with your team. And make sure you leverage their expertise, because having consensus from the very beginning of the project is really important for your long-term success. But if you do it right, you guard yourself against two things: spending too much time uncovering areas of the business that are not necessarily important to your overall project, or scoping it down to such a small piece of the overall process that you don't really get a good sense of how the overall business process works. Now, I know I'm not giving you perhaps the most clear-cut formula here, because there is an element of art that comes with process mapping, and it just comes from you guys doing documentation of a process over and over again, and checking your documentation against your problem statement to making sure that you really have uncovered enough of the business area to be able to effectively solve for whatever it is that you're solving for, whether it's improving cycle time, improving quality, reducing headcount, improving client experience. All of those matter, again, in defining boundaries. Okay, I am beginning to freeze. It's quite windy out here. I'm so grateful that you joined me again today. Please leave all your comments and questions in the section below. If you've already started to process map business areas and you want some validation or thought around, hey Sheila, do you think I'm doing this correctly? I'll be always happy to put in my 2 cents. Thank you so much for coming today. Please don't forget to subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.